The Nintendo Switch has been receiving a lot of third-party support all of a sudden in recent times, which is brilliant news for the console to ensure it doesn't follow the same fate as the Nintendo Wii U, its predecessor in the home console market. So due to this recent trend of third-party game announcements for the system, I just wanted to chip in with my top 5 third-party games that I would like to see come to the Nintendo Switch, both games that are already launched on other consoles and ones that are maybe launching in the near future. So this was quite difficult to pick between 5 games out of all the third-party games that are out there that I think would be a good fit for the Nintendo Switch. Maybe fill in a gap that is in the market in terms of games on the system, so there's not a game that does that sort of genre or that sort of job in terms of play style or an experience you get by playing it, mixed with games that I obviously like and enjoy and think would be a good fit on the system. And then some sort of wishful thinking titles, if you'd like, that I've put onto the list as well. So the first one we're going to start off with is pretty obvious. I think a lot of people would like to see this, and I think it's been heavily rumoured that it might actually happen at some point. But Grand Theft Auto 5 would be a really good instalment if they can get it onto the Nintendo Switch. Now, I know the full game experience that is currently available on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is probably not going to fit onto the Nintendo Switch, and it's more likely to be the same sort of game that was out on the 360 and PlayStation 3 version of that game, maybe with a little bit better graphics, because obviously the Switch is a little bit more powerful than those consoles, so maybe it could look a little bit better than it does, but in terms of the content I wouldn't have thought it would be too much different. So personally, I think even if they can get just the single player game to work on the Switch, that would be a massive achievement, and that would be a really good extra sort of game to be sold on the system that people would pick up, because that is a really fun game just to play single player and go around driving around and doing whatever you want to do. If they manage to get some aspect of online, obviously I'm sure Rockstar would prefer that because they make so much money from shark cards, but that would be a really, really good achievement as well, to actually manage to get the online game onto the Switch. However, I'm quite doubtful that will actually happen, and if it does happen, I really, really doubt it'll be the same online experience as on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in terms of all the updated content that has sort of come out for the game since. Not just because of the fact they might struggle on the Switch, but then the amount of memory that is going to be required to run that because of the constant updates to the game as well. Bearing in mind the Switch sort of doesn't have massive internal memory, and you probably need a massive SD card to fit that on. So if they did manage to get online, just the base game, it's better than nothing. I mean, it gives the option for people to go online and have the basic stuff there just without the updates. So sort of like the level of online that was available on the 360 and the PlayStation 3, so I think everything before heists maybe. But like I said, single player would be a good achievement if they just do get that on there in itself. Just having such a big game, big open world game like GTA 5, I'd be happy with that. Secondly on this list, a game that I haven't actually played too much myself, but I do own it, is Overwatch. So obviously Overwatch came out last year and was a massive game throughout the year. Still is quite a massive game now. Obviously having the constant skin updates, the style of game that it is, it just sort of refreshes the user base with doing that sort of thing. But I think having it on the Switch would be a massive system seller as well, because obviously people love playing Overwatch. If they can play it while they're out and about and on the go, maybe not the same in terms of like they're not going to be playing maybe online if they're out and about, but if they can feature into the Switch version a local sort of multiplayer option where you can just play against your friends, and even if they could add in like a sort of download play option like they used to have in the old Nintendo DS games, where you only need one copy of the disc and your friends can just connect to that. Maybe if they limit the character selection or whatever, but I think that would be a really good thing for the Switch, and if Blizzard can actually manage to get that game on there, which I'm pretty sure has been murmurings before about the prospect of it happening, but it wasn't something they were currently working on, but they'd be open to ideas and all that sort of thing. Hopefully they are working on it, because I think for them, they could make a lot of money selling the game on the Switch, and obviously then the further money they make from selling the crates or whatever they do with the skins and all that sort of stuff. So I think Overwatch on the Switch would be a really, really good addition. I think it would go hand in hand with the portable aspect, people playing with their friends, and I think it would be a good experience for people on the Switch to play that game if they have it available, and I think it would do quite well in terms of sales. So it's a win-win for everyone. Okay, so on to number 3, and this one's a little bit of a weird one, but I'm going to say Crash Bandicoot the End Sane Trilogy. And now I know some of you are going to be like, well, hang on, Crash is a PlayStation exclusive, that's never going to happen. But let me just explain. Obviously before, there has been many rumours of the fact that Crash might be coming to the Xbox One as well, and is only a timed exclusive for the PlayStation 4. Now, I put this on the list with the sort of view to that being the case, so that Crash will be coming to the Xbox One at a later date, and I think that if that does happen, they should also put it onto the Nintendo Switch, because they're sort of losing the exclusivity. It's not a PlayStation exclusive anymore, so it's not really a problem then if it goes onto the Switch as well. And personally, I think that sort of game, I don't think it's too demanding in terms of, you know, being able to put it on the Switch. I think that should be fine. Maybe they'd have to scale back a tiny bit on the graphics and all that sort of stuff, but I think they should be able to get it on there quite easy. But I think that sort of game is a perfect game to be playing on the go if you're sitting on the train or something like that. Just a perfect game for the Switch. So obviously platforms in general, platformers like Crash, did sort of die out, and the fact it's remaster and nostalgia and all that sort of thing is why it did quite well, and maybe there'll be a resurgence afterwards because of the success of the game. But Nintendo has always been a good platform for platformers, and obviously, you know, Mario being a massive platformer, Donkey Kong, they got a lot of platform type games. They've always sold well on Nintendo, and the audience that buys Nintendo consoles, you know, it's a really good audience for platform type games. So I think putting Crash Bandicoot on there, if it does become not exclusive to PlayStation anymore, I think that would be a really good option as well for Activision, and obviously they'd sell a lot of games there, and it'd be good for the Nintendo Switch, and maybe again be a system seller because of how well that game actually did. So I think I would like to play Crash. I mean, it's one of those games as well, you can have a go, you know, you get frustrated, give it to your friend to have a go, see if they can beat your time, all that sort of thing. But it's something you can just pick up and play on the go, and I think it would work really well on Nintendo Switch. Moving on quite quickly then, on to number 4, and I've gone for Star Wars Battlefront 1/2. Obviously Star Wars Battlefront 2 is coming out next month, I believe, and obviously I would rather that game come onto the Nintendo Switch. But if it was too much of a push, I think having Star Wars Battlefront 1 come onto the Switch, a little bit delayed, a little bit late, so they might miss the boat in terms of now having the same sales. But like I said, preferably it'd be number 2. But either way, a Star Wars game like that, in the vein of being a shoot 'em up sort of multiplayer game on the Switch, would be a really good option. And again, I think the selling point of this, as with Overwatch, would be the fact that, you know, you'd have all the online features available if you're playing at home and you've got a connection to the internet. But when you're out and about, if you can get together with friends, maybe they could introduce a game mode like the olden days, where they're in the original Battlefront and Battlefront 2, where you could sort of just, you know, join in and have a lot of computer players and have battles that way, like they did in the old games. I think the Switch would be a perfect console to have that on, so when you haven't got the internet connection, you can still do the big battles and all the different game modes, but fill it up with like bots, and then obviously the 2, 3, 4 of you that might be playing, split up into the teams or whatever you want to do. And I think that would be a really good way to push that game on the Switch. Again, I think they'd have to scale back on the resources in terms of maybe the look of the game, the graphics, because it was one of the better looking games when it came out on the PlayStation 4, and I don't think they'd be able to push that sort of amount of graphics onto the Switch. But I still think if they manage to get it on there, then if they focused a little bit more on the offline multiplayer aspect of the game, put a little bit more in terms of features on that side, maybe slim back on the online part, and I think the game would work quite well on the console. And last but not least then, I've got this game on the list specifically because I think there is a missing genre in this sort of vein, if you like. So this year's been a massive year for racing games. Obviously you've got the likes of Mario Kart, which came out, which isn't, you know, it's not a fully racing game in terms of the ones I'm going to mention now. It's more of a fun sort of you know, kart racing game at the end of the day, party game if you like. But Project Cars 2, Forza Motorsport 8, I believe it is, and obviously Gran Turismo are all coming out this year, or have come out. You also had Dirt 4, and I'm sure there was a couple of others that I've missed. The Crew 2 is an upcoming game that's not going to be too far away also, and I believe the Nintendo Switch doesn't have something like this. So I've put down on my list Project Cars 2 or F1 2017 to be sort of brought over to the Switch. Remembering back to the Wii U days, Project Cars 1 was originally announced as a Wii exclusive. That fell through, they were going to put it through multi-platform, and then finally the game never actually came to the console. So I'm not sure how strained maybe the developer of Project Cars 2 relationship could be with Nintendo, whether it's fine or whether, you know, there was a little bit of a problem after that sort of happened. But I think if they can manage to get a version of that game onto the Switch, that's a gap in the market in terms of Nintendo Switch games. I don't think there's anything out there really that sort of has that sort of experience. There's no games, there's no racing games with like, real cars and that sort of thing. I don't think that's available currently on the system. And if that wasn't able to happen, the other one I put on is F1 2017, so Codemasters game. They have in the past released an F1 game on Nintendo consoles. They released, I believe, on the DS, and they did one on the Wii. And I believe if they did manage to put F1 2017 on the Switch, they could make use of the Joy-Cons maybe in terms of the steering of the car, making it a unique sort of experience on the Switch. Maybe they could provide a peripheral steering wheel that you can fit the Joy-Cons in that sort of replicates Formula 1 steering wheel. I think that would be a good thing to add on to the game, as long as it doesn't cost too much more. Maybe they could try and find a way to include it in the price. I think that would be a really good sell, and like I said, addresses a gap in the market. There's not really a racing game of these sorts on the console at the moment, and I think the first person to get out there, I'm not sure they're gonna, they're not gonna sell massively, I don't think, any of these games, but the first one that's out there is probably going to do the best because of the fact it's the first one available to people on the console. I think there might be one or two third-party games that maybe enter into this sort of genre, but these are third-party AAA games that I think would be able to generate quite a bit of money for being the first one of this genre on the system. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think these 5 third-party games would be good additions to the console, or do you have alternative ideas? Let me know what your top 5 games are, third-party games to come to the console potentially in the future. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more Nintendo Switch news.